At the beginning of Perek Zion of Megillat Esther, we find Esther, the king, and Haman all together at the feast that had been prepared. Vayavo Hamelech v'Haman lishtot im Esther Hamalka. The king and Haman came to feast with Queen Esther. Interestingly, throughout this Perek, Esther is referred to as the queen, and not as she had been at the previous feast, just as Esther. And the king turns to Esther and asks the question, Masha elatech Esther Malka, what is your wish, Queen Esther? Uma bakashatech, and what is your request? Patan Esther Malka. And so Esther, the queen, responds, Vatomar, and she says, Imatzati chen be'einecha hamelach. If I have found favor in your eyes, king, ve'im ala melech tov, and if it's pleasing to your majesty, tinaten li nafshi b'shelati v'ami v'vakashati. My wish is my life, and my request are my people. Because we have been sold, my people and I, to be destroyed, massacred, and exterminated. If we'd only been sold off into slavery, I would have remained quiet. Because such a small thing is not worthy of the king's trouble. It's at that point that Achashverosh rises in shock and in fury and says, Miu zev ezehu. Who would dare to do such a thing? Esther identifies Haman, and within a few psukim, Haman is taken off and he is killed, hung on a tree. And there are two questions that arise from the early part of this parak. The first is the identification of Esther as the queen and the use that Esther makes of the second person, be'enecha, if it finds favor in your eyes, versus at the first of the two feasts, where Esther was just referred to as Esther, and she spoke purely deferential to the king in the third person. Why the shift? And the second is, why is Achashverosh so infuriated? Hadn't he agreed all along to the plan of Haman, la'abed, to destroy the Jewish people? The answer to the first question perhaps is that Esther has now risen to her point of greatness. She's no longer just a person upon whom history acts, but a person who's now an actor within history. She is the queen, and her husband, the king, is her equal, and therefore she is identified as Esther HaMalka, and she can speak with Achashverosh in the second person, Imatzati chen be'einecha hamelech, if I have found favor in your eyes, the king. The second answer, however, is more interesting because we find three different approaches to why Achashverosh is so shocked. The Gemara offers two, and modern commentators offer a third. The Gemara in Daf Tetvav Amuket of Masechet Megillah suggests, first of all, that it may have been that Haman was just a fool, that Achashverosh, the king, was just a fool. Achashverosh was a drunkard. He didn't immediately make connections between what Haman had proposed and Esther's threat to her life. And now, all of a sudden, explains Rabban Gamliel, it comes together for him. He's shocked because he hadn't thought about it before. The second possibility from Rabbi Eliezer Amodai suggests that up until this point, Achashverosh was playing along with Haman because he thought it was a good idea. And yet, after the previous parak, the story of Mordechai, the reality that the one person who had saved Achashverosh's life was the arch enemy of Haman, Achashverosh began to be suspicious, and he began to suspect that Haman was playing him, that Haman wanted his position. He wanted to be king, and therefore this was the way to remove that threat from before him. And so he feigned innocence in order to be able to kill Haman. But the third possible answer begins with a statement of the Akedat Yitzchak, the medieval commentary Rabbi Yitzchak Arama, who suggests that originally what Achashverosh had agreed to was just la'abed. That was Haman's request of him. And the word la'abed does not mean to destroy. According to Rabbi Yitzchak Arama, it means to enslave. And that's why Esther ultimately says, had we been sold, had your original plan been the final plan, I wouldn't have said anything. But now Haman has changed it, and he's going to destroy us physically. In modern times, the Malbim there's one other possibility, and that is la'abed, means not just physical destruction, but it can also mean spiritual destruction. And so as a result, what Achashverosh had agreed to was never to physically destroy the Jews, but to spiritually destroy them. And now, Lahashmid, Laharog, Labed, Esther places it before him that the Jews are going to be massacred. And therefore, he's infuriated because there's this tremendous loss to potential work, to potential tax dollars. There's the lost opportunity if he were to destroy the Jewish people. Three possibilities. One, Achashverosh is a fool and never put it together. Two, he's playing Esther in all of this in order to get rid of an adversary, Haman. And three, he had never agreed in the first place to destroy the Jewish people. Either he had agreed to destroying them spiritually only, but not physically, or enslaving them. And it's at this moment that Esther Hamalkah rises to her greatness, saves the Jewish people.